Welcome to the wrap-up of the 2021 Absa Business Day Supplier Development Dialogues. Great to have you with us today. I'm Joanne Joseph. And after all the important discussions we've had about what it takes to crack the Supplier Development Code, today we'll be celebrating the success of the award winners and picking their brains and that of other experts involved in the process on some of their winning ways. The stringent judging process recognized companies that have used strategy, innovation, and influence, as well as courage, to make an impact on their own supply chain and on the communities they service in agriculture, mining, and pharmaceuticals to boost the economy while serving the greater good of society. But it's not over. If you're eager to join the growing network of companies contributing to a sustainable economy through supplier development, go to www.sdawards.co.za. Let me give that to you one more time, www.sdawards.co.za, and that's where you'll find lots more information. Now, just a few days ago, the President delivered his State of the Nation address, and he paid particular attention to the support that SMEs require to develop in this economy. And he promised that government would create a conducive environment to encourage the growth of small businesses. Many in the sector have been inspired by this, although they don't quite know how it's going to work. So we're here to offer some practical knowledge as to how players in the supply chain arena can develop their businesses. Let me introduce you to our panelists today. Catherine Weinberg is the CEO of Fatola, the awards technical lead and head judge. She started Fatola in 2006, hoping to contribute to the transformation of the South African economy by growing the small business sector. Catherine is fourth in the Fatola team, which sets the standards many others follow and creates long-term partnerships with clients and other businesses. Also in studio with me this morning, David Mbarutsa, Absa's head enterprise and supply development ex-SA. David is responsible for defining and implementing the ESD strategy to leverage corporate partnerships and improve access to finance for suppliers in corporate value chains. And David is also with us. David is a chartered accountant with a BCom honours and several other academic qualifications. Lita Kuta, Director of Enterprise and Supplier Development at Tiger Brands, the 2021 overall winner. Well done to you. He has 17 years of extensive experience in ESD, including small business development, BEE supply chain transformation, small business finance, and small business incubation. Lita's also led and developed and rolled out many award-winning ESDs for corporates. So you see, I've got a number of experts with me in studio. And then, of course, we go to our remote guests, whom we're really happy to have and congratulate this morning. Larisha Naidu is head of Anglo-American Zimele, the 2021 first runner-up. She's a chartered accountant who's responsible for Anglo-American's enterprise, supplier, and youth development program. Her continued focus is on driving positive social impact in Anglo-Americans' host communities through key enterprise development initiatives that include access to markets, funding, and business support. And Ryan Neal is Group Head of Procurement at Empact Group, the second 2021 runner-up. Ryan's been the Group Head of Procurement at Empact for the past 4 years, and he specializes in enterprise and supply development initiatives while managing the day-to-day procurement requirements for the group. He regularly advises small businesses on gaining access to market through supply chain initiatives. So lots to learn from the experts on our panel today. And I want to start off by congratulating all the winners. I know it was a very tough competition and you've really done brilliantly. Now, remember, to those of you watching us from wherever you are, home or work, remember that we have a live chat going. So we encourage you to post any relevant questions there. And I promise I'll do my best to put your question to our panelists. Catherine, I'm going to start with you, the brains behind the operation. And it's wonderful that you're not in Cape Town today, but yes, you join us in Johannesburg. Lovely to be with you, all decked out, of course, in your locally made
Thank you.
And, you know, it's difficult not to look at the awards through the lens of the SONA, the State of the Nation address that we had a few days ago. As the brains behind the SDA awards, the head judge of these awards, do you feel there's some kind of impetus there for the awards? Right now.
I was really excited about the SONA presentation. I think President Ramaphosa has really created something that is very good for business. I think that the emphasis on infrastructure, building infrastructure, roads, rails, and ports, particularly speaks to Tiger Brands and Lita's mandate. You know, we need, as industry, we need to be able to function like a first world business, a first world country. So I think that's really positive. I think the other thing from small suppliers is this very strong focus on doing what needs to be done to creating enabling environment for small suppliers, such as reducing unnecessary red tape, is hugely positive. So I thought it was a really positive sentiment, and my sense is that's going to run through and line up for us to have a really rapid growth in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I can't help notice that you mentioned red tape there. And of course, that conversation is happening right now. We've now got a dedicated team in the presidency working to towards reducing red tape. Is that what we need? And is that going to have the desired result for small businesses wanting to enter supply chain?
Look, I think there's no doubt that the amount of red tape for an early stage startup business puts South Africa at a disadvantage. I understand, the World Bank no longer does its ease of doing business index, but if they were to do that, South Africa would have dropped down really significantly. And so without a doubt, when you create an enabling environment for startups, you create a pool of opportunity for best practice businesses coming forward. So I'm really excited about those changes and just look forward to them actually coming through and happening.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that's going to become a reality. Ryan, congratulations to Empact for your consistent improvement year on year and achieving the second runner-up overall. What sort of changes and improvements to the SD Awards have you noticed over the years?
Look, thanks very much. And I'd just like to say that year on year, there's been a big improvement in the awards. And it actually helps businesses like ours to develop our supplier development programs, enterprise programs, just to make sure that we keep up with the times. We've noticed from our very first entrant back 3 years ago, right through to the 2021 awards, that it's improved our systems and the quality of the submission that we put in, the way we track and record and measure what we're doing. So it really, really helps us. We've also noticed that the quality of the other entrants has improved. It's harder and harder to get to the final and to compete against the top businesses. So we're extremely proud that we managed to get the second runner-up as the overall winner. So congratulations to the others and the incredible work that's being done, not only by the awards themselves, but by the other entrants in the awards.
Larisha, presumably Ryan is speaking about you as one of the new entrants here. I understand Anglo-American Zimele is quite new to the SD Awards, but you've still made your mark as the first runner-up and winner of the coveted Impact Award. I'm wondering what your impressions are of the SD Awards and whether you think this was a worthwhile investment for AA Zimele.
Yes, no, thank you very much. So it was an extremely well-run process, highly competitive, I would say, but exciting just in terms of us stretching our thinking and our awareness. I think the reality is you get caught in every day, doing the work, and then you have to step back and be part of a competition. And that's always rewarding, exciting, and really tests your boundaries, your limits. And, if I just look at my team and our partners, this process allowed us to have a highly reflective point of where Anglo-American and Anglo-American Zimele was in terms of our sustainable mining plan, our purpose about reimagining mining to improve people's lives, as well as looking at thriving communities from an Anglo-American Zimele lens, and how did we fare against our objectives and our ability to roll out the program and do what we needed to do as a team. It was an exciting team building exercise. The adjudication was interesting. I won't give away too much about that. But I actually stepped out of my everyday skin and got into a place of competition. And that was exciting. Having said we were locked in an environment during COVID and sort of just getting out there and really enjoying and reflecting on what we've achieved as an organization, together with partners and broader industry to make an impact. We certainly got a long way to still go, but we were very encouraged. I think just the last point being, ESD is mainstream in Anglo-American. Our global CEO, Mark Urafani, actually complimented and amplified, the fact that we won the 2 awards. And it really helps with internal and external stakeholders to move forward to achieve common objectives going forward. So thank you very much. Back to you.
Well, Larisha, I think you did really well there. Congratulations to you for engaging in the competition in this way. David, this must similarly have been a new experience for you as Absa's ESD specialist for Africa. And Catherine is quite adamant that this is not just about South Africa. We're talking about going into Africa with this. What sort of value do you believe these awards are bringing to the continent?
Yeah, so firstly, thanks very much, Joanne. I think it was great to be involved for the first time around. I think I did pick up quite a lot of insights. Obviously, it's now in its 4th year of running, so there was quite a lot of expertise in terms of processes. Everything ran pretty smoothly. I think we're very fortunate that we could host the awards actually physically. So that meant we could actually support the hospitality value chain. And you're well aware that there's been significant impact on the hospitality value chain because of COVID-19. Numerous entrants. I think there were 13 different categories that they were competing for. All categories very relevant in terms of key aspects that are around supplier development at the moment, and even linked to some of the sustainable development goals. So it was very nice to see that as well. A very strong panel of judges and a very robust scoring process. So the winners in the end were very worthy winners, if I can definitely say that. And I think it's important to note, like you said, that supplier development is not a context that's unique to South Africa. It does stretch north of our borders as well, but still in its infancy stages, if I can call it that. So very important for us to showcase what corporates on the continent are doing, to tell some of the success stories, share some of the learnings, so we can get supplier development on the continent to the same standard where South Africa is. I would just like to congratulate our winners very quickly, which was Tala Oil from Ghana, which won the award for commitment to localization of the supply chain. Safaricom from Kenya, which won the award for commitment to women inclusion in the supply chain. Debswana from Botswana, which won the award for commitment to economic empowerment across the supply chain. And lastly, Vodacom from Mozambique, which won the award for commitment to pioneering a new supplier development. So well done to our contestants and our winners from the African continent.
Wonderful. That's really fantastic to hear. Lita, of course, you are basking in the glory of being, as the Tiger Brands team, the position of overall winner, having been received by your team. What does this mean to Tiger Brands?
I mean, we are last year we've 100 years old as a company. I mean, we wouldn't have been around for so long if we were not supported by our communities in terms of being consumers and of all races. So it means that we need to also start appreciating that we also need to give back by providing opportunities equitably to society. Because for Tiger Brands, as a company to survive, we need a thriving society. Right. When there's unemployment, we see it first because people buy less. So it's in our interest to make sure that we do that. I mean, if you look at what this award has done, it has legitimized ESD within Tiger, because now the board and the exco are actually seeing that they've done the right thing and we're doing the right things. And now the discussion is, how do we do more of it? Because of the magnitude of unemployment in South Africa, we need to do this at scale. And that's exciting. And all the ESD practitioners know the biggest challenge is convincing people, at management level, executive level, to back ESD and continue to invest. So this award really is a legitimacy. And I know that this is not only for Tiger, but also for other participants. And also what we know is that now we are the ambassador of the program. So part of what we need to do is to promote ESD and show people that it's the right thing. And it's one of the things that the country needs, more especially with issues of unemployment, poverty, and inequality, right? And also we need to also share our expertise. How did we get to win? What are we doing right? So that we can share and collaborate, because that's critical for the country, so that those who don't know can learn from some of us, but also we can learn from them. And the last thing is that will lead then into issues of collaboration, because it's critical to make sure that we take our resources and put them together, because singular companies don't have enough resources. And the issues of having unemployment that is almost 35%, it means we have to come together. But that can only be triggered if we collaborate and we share knowledge and expertise. But as Tiger, to become that torchbearer, to make sure that we're saying we've done the right thing, other companies can actually do that.
It's amazing, Catherine, how companies who win become ambassadors for the brand and for the awards. I want to just take a step back and go back to a question. It's a very basic question about the awards, but I think a lot of people are watching right now and wondering what they have to do to become a part of this effort. And Gitumitse Lekaba says, a question for the panel: how do you measure impact of the SD programs, and what are the key measures? So, as judges, perhaps you can just fill us in on that.
Certainly. So I think, measurement is really key. Obviously, it's one thing to talk about doing good work. It's another thing to make it visible. So if we just look at Anglo that won the Impact Award, the thing with Anglo is that they're able to give audited results, to showcase audited results, numbers of businesses helped, numbers of jobs created, the transformation of their procurement, how much procurement has been spent. So at the top end of ultimate best practice, being able to showcase that is really what's looked for. I think what makes a difference, made a difference with Anglo, and also made a difference with some of the other participants, is independent audit of that. So if you really wanted to be top of your game, yes, you have to measure key indicators. Of course, otherwise it's just a fairyland. But those that can provide an independent audit of those results are really those that stand out as being excellent.
Right. David, do you want to add to any of
Yeah, I can add. So on the continent, we looked again at numbers. So we looked at procurement spend of some individual companies, and we looked at how much of that procurement spend was going through to local companies. So that's a data point that we looked at. We also looked at significant transactions, because we've also been involved in doing some landmark transactions where significant amounts of financing has gone to local companies that have got massive contracts to do, roles or jobs that they wouldn't previously have gotten. So we're really looking at numbers, looking at procurement, and looking at how much of that procurement spend is going through to local companies.
Excellent. Yeah. I think that's really important to bear in mind. Catherine, having watched this whole process, you've really been at this a long time as a thought leader and as a supply development advocate for this process to move into Africa. What do you think are the most important emerging trends that South African and African corporates need to take note of in supply development right now?
Yeah. So I think that probably the one thing that's come out of the awards that is something we intended in the beginning, and it was a little bit of a wish list, was encouraging collaboration. So the whole thing through any industry is best practice is not something one person can do alone. Best practice comes from sharing your lessons learned, your challenges and your successes, and creating a pool of knowledge. And so I think that if in local countries, but also across Africa, the more that we can share what we've learned and ask for help with our challenges, and the more we can create collaboration, that's how you actually create continental scale.
Yeah. Ryan, let me bring you back in here. I see that Empact has also, interestingly, for me anyway, won the Focused on Women Award for the last 2 consecutive years. I think that's really quite an important aspect of what is trying to, or the experts on our panel have been trying to achieve here. What do you have to say to other corporates that also want to commit themselves to empowering women through their supply development programs?
Thank you, Joanne. Yeah, look, it's been really important for us to involve communities as much as possible. Our main shareholder, Tebi Group, it wants to uplift communities, and we found that working with women entrepreneurs has helped us be successful with that. Women entrepreneurs tend to be a lot more interested in giving back. They want to involve communities. They do build ecosystems between small businesses to help each other, employ from the local communities, and it really, really helps to uplift small businesses and make sure the employment stays local. And we found that the localization award that we were also fortunate enough to win, we found that the female entrepreneurs will bring other small businesses that are looking for a place in the market to also come in and collaborate together to be more successful. So what I would say to other corporates out there that are looking to work more with Black female entrepreneurs is purely around, we find them to be extremely detailed, extremely passionate, extremely willing to collaborate with other businesses and to do everything they can to involve their communities and give back where they can.
Ryan, just a question on that note. There are many small businesses run by Black women who really want to involve themselves and enter the supply chain, but simply don't know how to go about it. How do you go about locating those businesses to incorporate them, or is it a case of they're having to reach out to you, and if so, via which conduits?
Look, it's a combination of the both, and I think what a lot of people don't realize, unless you're actually part of this process, is that it's really hard to get for the corporates to find SMMEs, as much as it is for the SMMEs to find an access to market and the support that they require. And what we found is through collaboration with other businesses, and we're very fortunate with the Tebi Foundation that are part of the Tebi Group, that they run summits on a regular basis where they introduce local community businesses to big corporates, and we encourage more and more corporates to get involved and other big entities to get involved, where they can have platforms where they can bring entrepreneurs through to meet with the corporates and give them access to market. But likewise, also give us corporates who are constantly looking for SMMEs to put into our supply chain and develop our supply chains access to market. So we really, the collaboration between all big businesses and all of the winners from the SD Awards to bring SMMEs and like we say, really with the female entrepreneurs forward. So we can all benefit, not just the SMMEs access to market, but to ensure that the corporates continually get a good stream of small businesses that are coming in that we can help develop and help this country with the employment issues that we have.
You know, that's a very interesting point, Ryan, because, and Lita, perhaps I can pick your brain on this, because a really good question came in from Putela that asked, how competitive are small businesses on the international stage without constantly piggybacking on large corporations?
The thing is that large corporations have invested in infrastructure, and they've put billions of rand over a period of time. So what needs to happen to make sure that the smaller guys are also able to compete is the collaboration, because they don't have the resources to invest in the same distribution or supply chain to get products into market. Whereas when they leverage what is already existing, right, it lower their cost of doing business, because the investment into those supply chain has already been outlaid, right? But what is challenging that is happening is that SMEs don't know how to actually get into those opportunities and plug into those supply chains that are there. The ESD is there to make sure they facilitate a process that enables SMEs to be able to piggyback. I'll do an example in agriculture. Small businesses are struggling to get into silos to store their grains, right? I mean, it looks simple, but they don't have the infrastructure. It's our job to make sure that as Tiger, we negotiate with those silos. Because when we come as a big firm, those companies listen, right? And we are able to facilitate a process where small businesses are able to use that infrastructure. But obviously, their responsibility is to make sure that they sweat that relationship that has been created and take advantage of it. Because when we negotiate SMEs, we're also putting our own reputation on the line here, you know. So it's a two-way, but big businesses have to play a bigger role to make sure that they enable SMEs to leverage on existing infrastructure that has already been invested in.
But Lita, do they eventually develop a level of independence where after a certain amount of time, they don't need you anymore to engage in those negotiations for them or to build those relationships? Because by a certain period afterwards, they've developed a reputation of their own.
Yeah, pretty much there's two ways that you have to build their capacity to be able to do the negotiations. For example, companies that want to deal with Tiger brands, we work with them to procurement for the first year. We coach them, we guide them and say, these are the do's, these are the don'ts, this is what you say. We go as further as helping them put the presentation. We also go to procurement so that it's a soft landing when they actually land within procurement. But the next year, they gotta be able to go themselves, because that is where they become true entrepreneurs, is when also they build themselves to grow out of ESD. Because the challenge in South Africa is that people are perpetually, there are people still phoning me who knew me 10 years ago, they want to get into the ESD, but I've helped this person to be an ESD in my previous employment, you know. But because people, you know, are not built, also we don't give them the confidence. I cannot walk with them all the time. There's an instance where I need to build that capacity there. Secondly, also you have to build their investment capacity, because when they start to build on their own infrastructure, then they start to sort of pull out of the infrastructure they've leveraged. Otherwise, if they ride on that forever, they are very vulnerable, because if a corporate changes its mind, some of the guys could be out of business. But it's important that we support them, capacity building, give them the ability to go on their own, and also make sure they build their financial capacity to build their own infrastructure so that they are able to be on their own.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to look at what governments are doing to support these small businesses to become more internationally competitive. And the Africa Free Trade Agreement is a perfect example of that, which is looking at tariff reductions so businesses in Africa can actually trade with each other. So as an SME, you shouldn't just be looking at South Africa now as the marketplace. You should be looking at the rest of the continent. And small businesses from the rest of the continent should also be looking at South Africa as a marketplace. So the Africa Free Trade Agreement, I think, is going to get SMEs to start trading with each other. And that's a very positive development within the continent.
Yeah.
Can I add on?
Yes, go for it.
I think it also speaks to Lita's really passionate about the aggregator model. Because ultimately we're looking through supply development to create independent businesses that themselves create a middle layer, and ultimately maybe they're going to create more corporate, more larger businesses. And I think that ultimately you're wanting not just to be totally dependent on this kind of small supplier into these very few major players in the market, but actually creating self-empowered businesses that create now this thriving middle layer. So maybe that the ultimate of supplier development is to bridge that gap between the very tiny small suppliers who have a desire to work for corporate but are not yet big enough to do that. Right. And in the process of supplier development, you're enabling those suppliers either to go through an aggregator to become a supplier to big corporate, or themselves to leapfrog into that position.
Yeah. It's very interesting indeed, and I presume that a number of young people form the complement of the new business people who are being injected into the market as we speak. And I see Larisha, Anglo-American Zimele, also won an award for your impact for work with youth, which should rightfully be a huge focus area for developing economies with our young populations. What do other companies need to know about keeping a strong focus on youth in supply development?
Thank you very much, Joanne. And I think, just reflecting on youth unemployment in South Africa, the words that come to mind are heart-wrenching, significant challenge, and things that really impact everyday living. And if we look at our youth out in our communities, the unemployment rates are real. The structural issues that our youth are faced with to gain a job is extremely real. So youth need jobs, not just skills. And when we look at what is that skilling, and I look at research coming out of Deloitte, it speaks about typically in the past we would start with an individual. Now it's saying let's start with the job. Let's understand what the job market is. Look, there are issues from an economy growth perspective. There's a massive deficit between the skills of what a job seeker can offer versus what is the current employment requirements. And even if I look at an entry-level job, immediately those requirements kick out our youth from performing, from being able to enter a job. So through this Anglo-American Zimele program, we want to create meaningful job experiences. We are going a very sectorial focus. If we look at youth and if we're looking at tourism, what a great way for us to help an industry that's struggling right now because of the impacts of COVID, and really train young individuals in services that can be offered globally when people come into the country to be part of an experience that's unforgettable. So one of the major things we've done is we've gone sector specific skilling, whilst in mining, going into retail, going into tourism, really focusing on where are the jobs, because again, youth need jobs, not just skills. And just talking about that partnership being very, very critical, whether it's private sector, NGO, public sector, internal partners of Anglo-American. How do we really fight towards working for that young person to get into a skills development program, being able to be subsidized? I mean, youth are sitting right now with generational poverty. They don't have the access to networks, to transport. Geographically, where they are positioned takes them further back. If we look at Germany, there's a very successful model which looks at vocational education, specifically working with companies that employ from these institutions that are bringing about the ability to specifically skill young people. If I go back into supplier development, I would say here's a golden opportunity for private sector to go beyond what we need to do, to say, how do we capacitate young people for specific skilling that can further support and benefit SMMEs, that subsidize their payrolls, but in turn allow them to become more competitive, get young people to gain the right skills, and in that way get everyone productive. I think those are the type of things we really need to challenge ourselves. digitization played a critical role in us using digital platforms, giving out mobile devices, creating platforms so that while we were in lockdown, young people could go into learning and then being able to take advantage of that latent demand sitting in tourism, sitting in retail, that they would potentially never have that opportunity. When I talk to young people, some of the things that really worry them, we know that societal evils around gender-based violence, human trafficking, they become more vulnerable. So from a private and government and NGO perspective, we really have to work together in solidarity to really fight what I would say is a crisis from a youth unemployment perspective. Thank you.
Nita, you were among those nodding furiously on the panel. What do you want to add to that?
I mean, if you take what's just been said now and you look at where we operate in the agriculture, where if you go to rural areas, I mean, the numbers there in terms of unemployment, they just smack what the national numbers are. You know, you go to Elukwatini, for example, you find unemployment is 90%, right? And people in rural areas have no hope, you know. So part of what we had to do is to first, we gotta have hard and fast numbers in terms of targets. We've gotta be clear. You know, with women, 40% of our procurement has to go to women. No questions asked, because that then triggers an ability to go out and find it. Because if you don't have those measurable, 30% goes into youth. But we understand youth doesn't have experience. It's just the way it is. You know, they need to get the opportunity. Like we're all young, we got the opportunity, we learned and we got the experience. So part of how we've structured our ESD is that we set up this aggregator and say, we'll give you a 100 million contract, but 30% of that contract must go into small youth-owned businesses. 40% must go into Black women. You know, you have to do that. And also making sure that when you integrate your learnership programs, part of what we've done at Tiger, because we are not in the AgriSeta, right? We had to talk to our colleagues at the AgriSeta to say, can we use our skill levy to actually take learners, instead of placing them at Tiger, because, you know, some will be placed at Tiger, but we're saying ESD beneficiaries have to also take these kids, right? And we're creating them so they can create jobs and learning experience. And what we've also been insistent on is part of graduation, because everyone is looking at this. And we've said some of these kids must graduate to work for those aggregators, others must be farmers, meaning that we gotta give them land, opportunities, funding, because some don't wanna work, but they don't know what to do. So we also have to look at the process to which we can use ESD to play its role in that job creation and creating opportunities of learning. But also some of these beneficiaries who are successful in our programs have the onus to play a role in taking young people, not only just big businesses, because some of these ESD beneficiaries are going to become the future big businesses, but they have to play a role. And part of it is to make sure you've got hard and fast numbers, not just for us as Tiger, but also for the beneficiaries who are benefiting, so that they get into the process of understanding that part of being in the program of Tiger Brands, you have to take youth, you have to take women. And you find that they are embracing it. And part of it is that we are supporting it financially, because some of them cannot afford to hire that. That is why we're looking at using our leadership programs to do that.
The finance issue is a big one, Lita. I agree. And we've got a few questions on that. Steph has asked, and Catherine, perhaps you could answer this question. Do most of our winner corporates represented here today offer direct funding to the local SMEs? And someone else, Salida, asking, how do SMEs apply for funding? I mean, it often comes down to that, doesn't it?
So I think there's two things. In my experience in growing small businesses, finance is actually often the last thing that is actually needed. A lot of small businesses think that's what's needed, but in fact, they've got holes in their bucket that need to be fixed first. But when they do need access to finance, a lot of corporates do provide access to finance as part of their ESD programs. It depends on the program. I think as to access to finance, additional opportunities, maybe some of the colleagues are better equipped to answer that. But certainly in many ESD programs, access to finance, access to at least affordable finance opportunities comes as part of it.
Perhaps you'd be able to comment on that.
Yes, certainly. And where corporates are not providing direct funding, they're partnering up with financial institutions such as ourselves. So we've got a whole enterprise and supply chain development team. There's a team responsible for South Africa and a team responsible for everything outside South Africa. and we're partnering up with our corporates to be able to provide funding and affordable funding at times as well to suppliers, local suppliers that are in excess of purchase orders, contracts, or even invoices. So pretty much giving them the funding that they require to be able to perform on those procurement opportunities that they receive.
And just from the point of view of all the admin you've just spoken about, because that's a very intimidating thing for a small business. Even highly educated people opening small businesses struggle with those issues, and they often don't have the hands to be able to get through all that bureaucracy. Are they getting enough assistance in terms of filling out all the papers, making sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted?
Sure, certainly. I mean, we try to ensure that we provide them with the right amount of training in terms of how to open accounts, what are the best products from a financial point of view. But over and above that, it's also just around general capacity building. How are they managing their businesses? Are they producing financial statements every month? So basically to ensure that those businesses can actually grow from small businesses to medium-sized businesses and potentially be the next future corporates of Africa. So capacity building is a key pillar to any enterprise and supply chain development program, as much as access to finance, as much as access to markets.
Can I just speak to that quickly? I think it's really important. A lot of small businesses out there have this desire to become suppliers to big corporates, not understanding that there's a journey of growth. And when you're a very small scale business that, for example, doesn't know how to manage your finances, or you don't have financial records, and so applying for finance is a huge administrative burden, that in itself is an indicator that they're not yet ready for the corporate supply chain. And that's why it's so interesting. The colleagues speak all about enterprise and supply development. Enterprise development is really about fostering an ecosystem of small businesses, many of whom may never deal with corporate, and that's okay. I think what's exciting about the mining sector and the food sector, like Tiger Brands, is that they have an opportunity to build thriving local economies of small businesses that have themselves created an ecosystem. And actually, as a country, until we have created those thriving local economies, we're never going to grow in wealth. And so I just think it's important to see not everybody will become a supplier, and not everybody should become a supplier to corporate. There are other ways for them to become successful.
All right. Lita?
Yeah, I mean, we've set up a 100 million fund, it's Tiger, called the Puno Fund, and it's geared towards financing all our supply chain partners that are small, that get in. But them getting a contract is not enough, because many of SMEs are running around with contracts and they're not getting the finance. And so we had to invest in a deal origination program where we actually pay to assist them to put the transaction together, right? Because some of these entrepreneurs, are not able to put the right financial documents, never mind presenting them. And we're investing a lot. As a result, our conversion is about 90% of people that apply for funding. But we also want to make sure that when we do those deal origination documents and fund raising documents, they also understand what's in it, because most entrepreneurs, they go to an accountant to do the numbers. When it lands to a financier and say, explain this, they can't. So part of the journey is to make sure we invest in them doing those documents, but a lot of capacity building behind it. That's why we sit at 80-90%. If you look at how much we've deployed, 81% of our fund is deployed, because we don't have issues of deal origination, because we had to work and support those entrepreneurs to actually put those funding application, because funders, when they look at that application, if it's not legitimate, they'll just kick it out. And secondly, you need a legitimate person who's able to explain what is in that. So that is the process that one has to go through, hoping that when they go to their second round and third, they would have learned from the first process. They should be able to start doing it on their own.
Ryan, this is a tough ask, and I just want to make it very clear to businesses, no matter what size they are, corporates who take this on. Clearly, there's a massive responsibility for the younger businesses that are coming into this. You have to clearly invest a lot of resources, a lot of time, in order to groom them to be able to enter the supply chain in the long term and be successful, don't you?
Yeah, 100%. Look, the EME part of the supply chain, when you are bringing in businesses that are either startups or have been in business for a short period of time, and they're coming to you and saying, okay, we want to do business with you. But when you look into a little bit more detail into their businesses, and you realize the resources and the time you're going to have to put in with the team that you have in order to getting them to where they need to be. And as Catherine mentioned earlier, that the ED part of the process is so important. It's recognizing that when you bring a supplier into your program, that you've got to spend a lot of time working with them to give them the soft skills and the business skills before they're in a position where they can become part of your supply chain, to make sure that you don't have to hold their hand in the early days of being a supplier, in order for them to be able to give you this kind of service and quality of delivery that a business does need. But yeah, the ED part, I think probably for us has been the biggest challenge in resource time, in developing these small businesses to become just skilled enough to enter the supply chain and with the right governance and understanding of how to complete the right kinds of documents when it comes to finance. We find we spend a lot of time putting resources from our business to give these guys as much support as possible, not just for us, but to make sure that they're able to enter other supply chains as well. You also don't want a small business that is completely reliant on you and your support and your business. You need to ensure that you're able to get these small businesses into other areas of the market to ensure that they can survive. Like Lita mentioned earlier, should you decide that your business needs to change direction or you need to support other small businesses as well, they need to be sustainable for a period of time with you, but then also be able to go out and find other business to make sure they're going to be sustainable going forward.
I mean, I imagine, Ryan, that it's probably quite a challenge. I mean, you've got people exiting the education system at entirely different levels. That may depend on where they're being educated, whether they've had access to education or not, whether they've had access to a decent education and, say, EMS as a subject to be able to do the books. There might be language difficulties. Do you give yourself a period in which you say, I'm going to test this business out, and if within the period of a year or 2 years we're not seeing results, I'm going to have to let this one go and give another small business a chance to be educated in the sense that you are grooming them for success?
Yeah, look, I think it's really important that up front, you make it very clear to the SMMEs as they're coming to you that this is a long road. This is not something that is going to happen overnight, and you've got to be in a position where you can skills test the SMME to see what kind of development and resources you're going to have to give them access to in order to take them on that journey with you. We were a little brutal just this year already, where we went through a process of removing certain SMMEs, ED beneficiaries from our database and our program because they haven't developed and they haven't applied the passion and the needs in order to get themselves to a point where you believe you can take them forward. You want to be in a position where the people you're working with and the companies that you're dealing with, they've got a passion and a need to develop and come along for the journey. It's not about, and Lita mentioned it earlier, you want to help, but you can only help companies so much, entrepreneurs so much. They often come to you with a concept or with a skill set. What they do often lack is the business skills. They lack the ability to understand what they need behind the entrepreneurship idea that they have, the access to finance, how it works, the cash flow of your business, the marketing of your business. These are the skills that they tend to lack and that you spend a lot of resource and time giving them before you can bring them on board.
Some interesting insights there, Ryan. Thank you for that. I want to start wrapping up now, and I'm going to just quickly run around the panel just to get a sense of this. I'm sure there are many SMEs that have been watching this broadcast and thinking to themselves, I'd love to be involved, but I'm in two minds. It sounds like hard work. Their corporates thinking the same thing. Do we have the resources to put towards this? And I'm going to just give each of you a quick sort of half a minute to tell us why they should. Catherine?
I think absolutely. Supplier development is a huge lever of growth. And there's absolutely no doubt that if you look at the collective resources in the corporate sector, this is a huge opportunity to build an inclusive economy. So as a small supplier, yes, if you're really committed to growing a business, doing what needs to be done, absolutely supplier development is where to go. But just like any game, it's not an easy game. There's always going to be ups and downs. But yes, supplier development definitely works.
Okay. Thank you,
Sure.
Catherine.
And I think linked to what Catherine has said, it's also a key lever that you can actually, diversify your supply chains, right? So there's certain parts of the economy which have been left out. We spoke about women suppliers, we talk about youth suppliers, and getting them into mainstream supply chains of large corporates is one of the ways that you can actually get them involved in mainstream businesses. So not only is it a key lever for economic growth, it's also a key lever to spread economic viability.
Thank you, David. Lita?
I mean, we've got unemployment issues for sure, and they are the biggest risks we have as a country. And secondly, as companies, our society, our markets, but we have to play a role to give back and make sure we open our supply chain. I mean, in our instance, I mean, food is one of the industries that, despite COVID, it was still okay because we need food. But we need to make sure that we involve Black people in the food production system, because that then creates new waves of customers that will actually buy your product. It's, you know, it's a commercial sense, but also there is an obligation to make sure that you do the right thing. What is important is that SMMEs must really take this opportunity. It's not easy. By the time they get the opportunity, so much has gone in to negotiate inside, get the opportunity. So they need to make sure also that ESD program is for a short space of time. Chances that it's between 3 to 5 years, because also we need to make sure we give them enough runway and enough, you know, weight so that we can develop them. But they need to strive to graduate, because when they graduate, that is where they start creating the jobs that we want as a country. Ourselves, we must not tire in supporting small businesses. We need to make sure that our excos and our boards continue to invest in this program, because it's something that is right for the country that we need.
Thank you so much for that, Lita. Larisha, a quick one from you.
Yeah, so I think, you know, we've spoken a lot about financial assistance, and we cannot underestimate the power and value of that. If I just look at Anglo-American Zamele and the steps that Anglo-American has taken to support our loan funding and our SMMEs, we've got support on the ground for those applications. We're working very closely with the Absa banking team to be able to with hand in heart, reach our SMMEs out in the rural environments. I think the fact that we're integrating our supply chains allows us to de-risk the transaction and support at a hub level together with lower interest rates. We've got a flat interest rate that is not linked to the risk of the transaction, because we understand it is developmental, coupled with the fact that we go on the strength of future cash flows and not the strength of a past balance sheet, because we're hoping we can translate one purchase order into a long-term contract. And you know, we are seeing a 95% recovery rate on our loans because of the work that's coming through from our teams, whether it's sitting in Absa at the hubs with TechnoServe supporting us, Anglo-American supply chains, massive role that they play, coupled with the support of our excos and our board members to really, really forge ahead. So I think those are the things that are very important. Another thing is partners. We cannot move forward without the diversity of partners. They bring funding, they bring skills, they bring insights. Those are the things that really allow us to move with tenacity forward, even though there are many different structural issues. So I'd say that's what you know, we really need going forward.
That's really encouraging, Larisha. Thank you for that. Ryan, I'll give you the last word.
So yeah, I just think the awards themselves have given everybody a great platform to move forward with the ESD programs. But I think what is absolutely essential is that it's got to be a collaborative approach, and more corporates need to get involved. The government still has to do more in order to enable businesses, small businesses, large businesses, to assist small businesses, and the resources that are needed to bring small businesses through with the development requirements right the way into our supply chains. So, you know, I absolutely welcome collaboration with all of the businesses that take part in the Supplier Development Awards, the Absa Supplier Development Awards, and I encourage more and more businesses to get involved. So we see you, all of us that participate, we're able to work together, collaborate, and make sure that we can make this a much bigger thing than individual efforts, and we can have a bigger impact on the country.
Ryan, thank you so much. That's a really positive note on which to end. Well, what an exciting start to the year for so many companies that participated in these awards. And aside from the prizes themselves, the many learnings along the way have been a definite advantage for those who chose to participate. You can take part too. The entries for this year are now open, and companies can go to www.sdawards.co.za, www.sdawards.co.za to complete the expression of interest. On that note, let's wrap it up for today. If you need to refer back to any of the information we've covered, you can watch a recording of our discussion on YouTube and Business Day TV. Thank you so much to our brilliant panel members for their important insights, and thank you for watching today. Many thanks to Absa for partnering with Business Day Dialogues to highlight these exciting awards. Let's hope 2022 is the year of small businesses and their increasing role in the supply chain. From me, Jo and Joseph, take care. Bye-bye.
Was a pleasure.